Welcome to Synchronicity. I'm a big fat liar. I said you'd only be getting guest episodes, and here I am with a non-guest episode. We do have the bonus episodes. I announced it on Instagram and to the email list. If you're not on those and you want updates, that's usually where I do them. Bonus episodes have just dropped of Synchronicity. They're on Patreon. I opened up a new tier, so if you don't want any of the other stuff, you know, the readings, the music, the live streams, you might not want that stuff and you just want those sweet, sweet solo casts. Those are now on Patreon for $5 a month. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for people who want those. I will still be doing this podcast. I am not eliminating anything public facing. I am not the type of person who would gate content at the expense of people who either can't afford or don't want to pay for it. That's not my style. You know that, guys. We got a good episode for you this week. I am back to saying we have good episodes before I've actually recorded them. I actually have a bunch of guest episodes in the can all ready to go, but I thought it would be a good idea to just do a regular solo cast this week because there's some stuff going on all around the world, all here. We're not going to talk about global events right now. I've already said my piece on that. But I do want to kind of talk about a few things here this week that may be helpful. Before I do that, I also wanted to announce that I am testing out various kind of group imaginal activities, right? So these are ideas that I have that I am testing out. They are low cost, easy access sessions where a bunch of us will get together over the course of a month, 28 days. We're going to go with the lunar cycle. So if you're interested in those, what am I calling them? Yes, Imaginal Actualization Monthly Group. So I think we're going to do about 15, 20 spots for that. It's $77. There will be 3 sessions over the course of the month. We are starting this off in November. You can sign up now. You can go to syncpodcast.com/energy. And we'll have a cool group. This will also include, because I know sometimes with like the group stuff or even readings, like you get a reading, you go to a group thing, and then you're just kind of like on an island by yourself. For that reason, I am making sure that people have throughout the course of that month unlimited email and messaging support. So you can hit me up on Instagram or send me an email. And if something's going on and you're like, I don't really know how to deal with this, or this happened, what should I do? Or, you know, just some support that will also be provided. I'm kind of beta running these just because they're not fully fleshed out ideas, but I do know that the kind of community vibe that we have going on the Patreon and just in the other places where I do this stuff is very helpful for people. So if you're interested in that, obviously you do not have to sign up for this. You can go to syncpodcast.com/energy. It is the first thing there. You will see the details for it. And if you're called to do that, I would do that. Also, for the many people who hit me up for the annual Imaginal stuff we're going to be doing starting in 2024, this is probably the best place to start. It's going to be less expensive than the annual one for obvious reasons. It's just a month, and it'll give you a sense of what that's going to be like. So if you were interested in that and you were one of the people who hit me up for that, this is what I would recommend to do. It's good. I mean, I kind of have a lot of stuff planned for that, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. So if you are called to do that, by all means, do it. We're having fun. Today, here's what we're going to talk about. This is a perfect segue because we're going to be talking about money. I don't know about you guys, but over the past year or so, in all the conversations with my friends, family, just situations in general, people have been having a hard time financially, right? And I want to talk about some of the causes for that, some of the ways we deal with that, and also how to change that, right? Because it's not something that's comfortable. The stress and kind of just chaos that it can breed in your mind when you are living month to month, or you're having trouble paying your bills, or maybe you're racking up debt, can be really difficult to get yourself in a positive mindset. And you may even be making progress like one day, and then the next day something comes in and it hits you and you're like, fuck, like, what do I do? And our natural tendency obviously is to panic, right? It is not a good feeling like you don't have enough money. Paradoxically, the way to attract wealth and abundance into your life, and I say this as someone who has lived on both sides of the extremes of extreme lack and extreme abundance at various times in my life, the way you actually do it, and this is easier said than done, I do not want to make it sound like, oh, just do this, it's super simple, is to actually feel like you have enough, to feel like you have abundance, to feel like you have wealth. This is counterintuitive because when you look at your bank account and the money isn't there and the expenses are there, maybe you have children, which even adds another layer of stress. I've chosen to have 3 children, so I've tripled up the stress in terms of being a provider for my family. But I want to talk about this because I think a lot of people fall into this trap. The other thing is, when you look at like the global economy or U.S. economy, inflation, things aren't going well, investment assets are down all across the board. It's very easy to start believing a narrative that things aren't good. But I do want to remind you that there are plenty of resources in the world, right? All of the fruit that falls from the trees all over the world and rots on the ground obviously could be theoretically used to feed the people who don't have food in the world. It's a problem of logistics, ignorance, control and conquering mindset that makes it so these systems don't really work as effectively as they should. And it's a shame, but if you start believing the narratives that there's only so much of the pie and only the 1% or only the uber wealthy are the people who reap the rewards of money in the world, that really puts you behind the 8 ball, right? It puts you in this situation where it's like, how am I supposed to do it? I'm just a person. I don't have these tools and wealth to create more wealth. And yes, that's like, I don't argue these objective facts. Like, I'm not going to tell someone who grows up in abject poverty that they have the same advantages of someone who grows up in an upper middle class or wealthy upbringing with the trust fund. It's a very different situation. Nevertheless, the feeling of having something, the feeling of abundance is critically important for you actually to open up the channels to allow it to come to you. And I know so many people are struggling with this right now, just from personal conversations I'm having with people. I haven't spoken to anyone over the past year who's like, yeah, I'm financially killing it. It's like the best it's ever been. Those people are out there. I'm sure you see some of them. It's not everyone, of course. A lot of people have figured out how to attract abundance into their life, but it's not always as easy as you would like it to be. As a sidekick to this episode, I do encourage you to go back and listen to the episode I did a few years ago called Money 101. That is a very excellent place in terms of just understanding the energetics of the mindset to be in. It's particularly useful if you already are kind of like high vibing, flowing, and you are just trying to make a few different changes. But today's episode is more about how to do it from the other side. Let's say you are in the place where shit is not flowing. And I say this from a personal standpoint too. Financially, in my life right now, I am not in the best position of my life. A few years ago, I had a shitload of money. Right now, I don't have that. And I say this to relate to people who may think that this is just some easy thing for you to do when everything is going well. I personally believe that I put myself in these situations to demonstrate the illusory reality of money, that it is just energy, that no matter what your situation, you can carry a mindset of abundance and prosperity no matter what's going on. I do, and I have recognized in my life that one of my skills is not freaking out when things are going terrible financially. I have in the past absolutely done that, and it always perpetuated the situation. It always left me in a stuck feeling for longer than I wanted to be in that feeling. So let's talk about this today. The main thing that I'm trying to communicate here is that as hard as it can be sometimes, and as natural as it feels to freak out and obsess about money and about abundance, a lot of times we put those issues in our life, those obstacles, those threshold guardians, because it's something to focus on, right? It is, if we have to worry about making money, if we have to worry about a career or how we're going to pay our bills, that's what our focus becomes. It's a very narrow focus, but it gives us something to do. Oftentimes, what's harder than that is being like, what do I want my life to look like? what do I want to be doing? Like, what's my authentic version of who I am? What's the best version of me that I can bring to the world to help myself, help other people, if that's my aim? Like, what does that look like? That's a tough question. I know, as difficult as money problems may seem, that may seem like a much easier thing to deal with. It's not. It's much harder to kind of step into the version of yourself who is doing exactly what they want to do, not people pleasing, not getting into a situation where you're doing things for other people or out of a sense of obligation or responsibility. And it's a lot harder to be like, fuck, what do I do to take care of myself? Like, what am I here to do? What is my purpose? Those questions are scary. They can be very, like, upsetting to the point where you don't even want to think about that. So you put all of these other dramatic situations in your life that kind of fill the void so you're not having to focus on those questions. I was lucky enough to experience all of those financial woes kind of alleviated, right? I didn't have to worry about money for various points in my life. And what ended up happening is I got into this place where I realized I wasn't happy because of the money. It wasn't the money that was actually the problem. It was an issue of me not really kind of looking into myself, letting emotions come up, processing trauma, figuring out like who I want to be in the world, what is possible, how can I do those things. Those questions were terrifying to me because it really kind of forces you to look at yourself and be like, well, who am I in the world? What would I like to be doing? And it sounds like that would be an easier problem than just financial stuff, but it's not. And so I want you I invite you to investigate why you think you may be conjuring up financial trouble in the world, like in your world. Like, what are the reasons that this is coming up? Is it easier to focus on something like that than these broader questions, like existential questions of who you are, what you're doing, why you should be doing it, what truly do you want to do? And another thing that begins to trip people up is like, well, is the thing that I really want to do the thing I should be doing to make money? Because sometimes those are different things. There is this narrative that, you know, you do what you love and that will be your career and you will be financially compensated for that. And for some people, that's totally true. And it is absolutely possible if that's a dream of yours and it resonates with you. But sometimes they're two different things, and they should be two different things. How we make our money and how we express ourselves creatively or be our authentic selves in the world are completely different areas, and there's no shame in that. It's not a failure. I think it's very important to realize that a lot of what we see in the world from either celebrity culture, social media, is people stepping into a version of themselves and they present that as like a hallmark of success. Look what I've done. Look what I've created with my, own being. And now I am one of those people who does this amazing stuff. Look at me. Wouldn't you like to do it? And at the end of the day, that's great. But if it becomes something that's discouraging to you because that's not what you're doing, then that's not what you should be focusing on. This is the weird thing about energy in money form. It'll flow to you when you start doing what you love to do. It doesn't mean that will come to you because you're doing the thing you want to do and that's going to make you the money. That's not how it works. But it does open up this channel and this vibratory frequency of being that allows those channels to open in whatever way they're supposed to. So one thing I want to do today is just kind of quickly go through a few things that help me when I'm going through financial hardship or perceived financial hardship. The first thing is always watch how you're reacting to situations. If your tendency is to freak out, to worry, to panic, to create doomsday scenarios, if you miss a payment or you don't have enough incoming in to support your life, you just want to watch that at first. And you may be like, oh, I don't want to watch it. I'm super fucking familiar with that. I know what's going on. But the reason I say to watch it is because that's the prereq. That's the first step for capturing that kind of mindset. And then at least, the very least, acknowledging that that is not a productive way of being. It's not a productive way of thinking of things. It doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't actually solve anything. Yeah, sure, it may motivate you temporarily to get your ass in gear, but this is like a very important thing about anything. This goes for, we'll use like relationships as an analogy for this. Have you ever noticed, everyone calls it the girlfriend effect, but it's also the boyfriend effect. When you're in a relationship, and let's say you haven't been in one and you've been trying and you've been looking to meet someone, you can't get anyone interested in you because you're feeling low. You're feeling desperate. You're feeling like, oh my God, please, someone love me. And that's a natural repellent. And it sucks that it's a repellent because, you know, you would hope that people would see that you're suffering and you're an amazing person and someone would come to you and say, oh, I love you. You're the best. But what happens is when you operate from that frequency, it turns things away. It turns people away. It turns energy away. It's like a magnet when you flip them, you know, and it literally repels it away. So what happens is when we get into those states, we understand on some level that we're kind of like hoping and wishing, but what we're really doing is crystallizing the feeling of not having the thing, not having the relationship, not having the money, not having the ease, not having the joy, not having the magical synchronicities that are able to flow up in our life when we kind of let ourselves settle down into something. So I don't want to make anyone feel like they're a failure if that's not a natural mind state for them. I think for very few people, that's a natural state of being. When something bad happens, in quotes, to react as though nothing is happening and everything is working out is not only counterintuitive, it feels unnatural. Nevertheless, that is the state you should be putting yourself in or allowing yourself to sit in. And I just want to talk about a few of the ways that I am able to do that. One, I do acknowledge I have a natural proclivity for recognizing kind of the illusory nature of money and wealth. And this cuts both ways, and it's served me and it's hurt me in various aspects of my life. But I have a hard time ultimately taking financial matters at this point in my life seriously. Think of Page of Cups mentality, right? Knowing that, yes, there are serious situations, there are things that objectively are heavy, but are you able to zoom out and look at it from the perspective of kind of, it's not that big of a deal. I will say this here one time. For 15 minutes every day, I go on TikTok and offer free readings. If no one comes into the lives, I just sit there and talk to myself. If people come in, I give them readings. And I had one yesterday, and I won't mention her by name, but she was in a very objectively difficult situation. And shout outs to her. She was super awesome, super cool. And I ended up doing a reading for about 20 minutes for her just because it was a situation that felt like it warranted it. And her house burned down and she lost her job. Like, that's pretty shitty, right? Like, that's like about most people's worst nightmare when it comes to their personal lives. It's very, very bad. And I was talking to her and her reading was very clear. I believe it was 10 of Wands, Page of Cups, High Priestess. And I was telling her, like, I don't want this to sound insensitive or rude. And I'm sure you can tap into this energy at times. And I recognize the heaviness of your situation, but try to just laugh at it like it's ridiculous. Your house literally burned down and you lost your job. This is like a movie. If you went to a Hollywood producer and said, hey, here's my script, the protagonist's house burned down and they lost their job, they'd be like, maybe make that a little bit more realistic. That's insane. And she was getting it. She completely understood. And that's one way to just look at your situation, no matter what it is, and just laugh at it. Genuinely acknowledge that it's happening. Don't push it away. Don't pretend. That's not what I mean by when I say things aren't real. It doesn't mean spiritual bypass or push this stuff away because it's so uncomfortable you don't want to deal with it. You go into it. You feel the depth of it. But even with that, you laugh at it because it's so ridiculous. And then if you're able to get into a mind state where you can feel the truth of that, that's your crack in the doorway. That's your ability to start seeing that there is a way to create a perspective shift no matter what is going on in your situation. And I want to bring this up again because sometimes I think when I talk, people think that like my life is always easy. There's never any hardship. But I want to tell you about a couple of things in my life that really showed me that this imaginal stuff, that this manifestation, that changing your vibratory frequency, whatever you want to call it, timeline jumping, works. I had two situations with my middle child who had serious health issues when he was born. And they were very scary and very heavy, and both involved lengthy hospital stays. And anyone who's a parent knows there's really nothing quite as terrifying as seeing your helpless small child in a hospital bed struggling, and you don't know what the result is going to be. And so, yes, it's wonderful to use the imaginal techniques for basic level desires to just improve your life, your mental well-being. Use it for that. But when this stuff really is important is when you're in one of those situations. And so here's what I did. He was having health issues 2 different times. I went to the hospital. My ex-wife was staying there with him at the time. We were still married. And I went home from the hospital and I cried, of course, like it's a very heavy situation. But then I laid down and I diligently, multiple times a day, imagined walking home with him, holding the baby carrier in my arms, saying to my wife at the time that, wow, that was crazy, but thank God it worked out. I can't believe he was only there for a few days. And while the initial prognosis when he originally went in the first time was pretty bleak. He was supposed to be there for about a month. He had serious RSV, was having trouble breathing. It was brutal watching the treatments they had to do for him. But I went in there, rather than being despondent and freaked out, I went in there with a very positive mentality, was making jokes with the nurses, making jokes with the doctors, floating the idea that he would be out in a few days. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. All of the medical circumstances around that specific incident should have been that this kid is here at least a few weeks. Like he was not going to get out. He was not responding well to treatment. It was not anything that was looking like there was any realistic chance that this kid would be out there in a few days. He was out in a few days. And you could say, hey, Noah, that would have happened anyway. But I know that it wouldn't have. I know that my ability to shift my mindset and mentality and belief about that is quite literally what allowed him to come out earlier. And you don't have to believe that that's true, but I can tell you that in that situation, compared to money, is a million times harder to make less heavy, right? To make less serious. You're seeing your child there in pain, in agony, struggling to get breaths in. It's a very heavy situation, but I chose to look at it as though it was a test of my faith, a test of his health, a test of everything. He had surgeries that he had to go through. There's nothing as excruciating when your small child is going through surgery at a very young age. I remember sitting in the waiting room. It's just brutal, but I just told myself, this will work out. He's going to be fine. He was in the hospital another time with a serious stomach issue and was having seizures from high fever. I did the same exact thing. This was a couple of years after that. And the truth is like, this is when these techniques work. This is when this ability to recognize that you are in charge of your reality on a very fundamental level, that's when those things work. And the beauty of those situations, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, and I obviously hope that my child didn't have to go through that, but I have those as reference points to look back on. I have those as situations to go, you know what? This really did work. It wasn't just my imagination in the pejorative sense, thinking that this was something that was going to work. Like, that happened. Those are things that I can remember that actually happened when I employed these techniques faithfully. And a lot of times it really does come down to a sense of faith. And faith, again, is loyalty to the unseen world. Your senses, your perspective are going to pick up a lot of data throughout your days, right? There's a lot of information feeding into you saying, this is the way it is. Believe this. This is how it is. Your job is to recognize that that's input, but recognize internally your ability to shift your mentality, to truly sense yourself into it is absolutely what creates your experience of reality. Now, let's say you're the type of person who knows this intellectually. You understand that this makes sense. You know that panicking isn't the right action. You know that all of these things are just kind of wise things that people should do, but you can't shift yourself out of it, right? You've hit that obstacle where even when you're trying these things, you wake up, you're in a state of panic, you go to sleep, you have anxiety. What do you do then? Okay. maybe don't focus on the end result right there. Maybe just focus on calming yourself down. That's a valid state to appropriate, because it's very difficult to get into a positive, imaginal, manifestation-y vibe when you're not naturally reacting to that. So let's go to the root of it. Let's go to the root that your inability or seeming inability to calm down and relax is preventing you from actually imagining this stuff in a clear and cohesive way. That's a great place to start. So all you need to do, and I don't need to revisit the technique specifically, but put yourself in a drowsy, kind of, light state of being, and then employ the imaginal techniques. And if the imaginal techniques are not flowing, if it feels very difficult, if you're distracted, if your mind is jumping from thing to thing, don't use the imaginal techniques. This isn't a rule that this is the only way to create reality. All the imaginal techniques are doing at the end of the day is suggesting ideas to your subconscious, deeper level of being, your soul, your higher self, whatever you want to call it. There's infinite ways to do that. It's not just this way, and this is the magic bullet that's going to solve all your problems. But what you can say to yourself very gently and repetitively, right? I want to be clear that repetition, faith, and expectancy are the three secret ingredients. And sometimes we have a little bit more than the other, but repetition is something we always have access to. You can always repeat something to yourself over and over again. And rest assured, if you're doing that diligently, almost obsessively at times, one will get through. You're going to get one past the goalie. So don't give up, number one. That's the only way things don't show up in your reality the way you want them to. Oftentimes, it's like you ever try to remember something and it's on the tip of your tongue and you're trying so hard and you can't remember and you're like, I can't remember. And then you just give it up and then you instantly remember. It's the same thing with repetition. You repeat, you repeat, you repeat. One absolute, I don't want to say it's a prerequisite, but it is one of the biggest kind of factors for recognizing that you're able to do this is gratitude. Again, intellectually, we know this makes sense, but actually feeling the feeling of gratitude is something you should be able to summon forth at any time. You could just have gratitude that you're not in a war-torn part of the world, that you have your health or the people around you are solid. At any given point, there is something to be grateful for. That's a vibratory frequency, and something I've been experimenting with a lot recently is transposing feelings, right? Transposing states of being onto other, maybe more discordant or not so harmonious states of being. Gratitude is a very powerful frequency. It puts you in a very powerful state of being that allows energy to flow into you that is going to help and dramatically reduce suffering. It is impossible to be suffering when you are expressing gratitude, when you are feeling gratitude. It may come in right after that, and you may be like, holy shit, here comes the floodgates are open, here's all the suffering again. But in the moment of gratitude, you cannot feel that. So if you're able to capture a feeling of gratitude, a feeling of ecstasy, a feeling of joy, try to remember and get a hold of what that feels like. If you're able to take that feeling, and then even though the circumstances of your life may not show this, apply it to a financial situation, a health situation, a love situation, a career situation, watch what happens. See what happens if you do that diligently for a few days, for a week, for a month. This is very much like exercise, right? I've spoken about this before. You may be exercising every day, eating right, you've let yourself go. And do you see results the next day after a great workout? No. Do you see it after a few days? Probably not. Do you see it after a week? Maybe. Do you see it after 2 weeks? Better chance. Do you see it after a month? You see it after a month. A month of sticking to that regimen absolutely show results. This is the same way we do it with our minds and our hearts. It's the same exact thing. You repeat this diligently until you begin to see the results. And if you give up before then, you can note that and say, oh, you know what? I didn't keep it up. I didn't do the thing I was supposed to do. Well, maybe this is why I'm getting the results I want. This is not wishful thinking. This is not just hoping for something to be different. Your willpower and your intellect are essentially powerless. That's why when we use those things, it's so unsatisfying at times, because we do not understand that this is something that is not the correct tool. It's like using the wrong tool to screw something in. If you need a hammer to hammer something in, and all you have is like, I don't know, what's another tool? A ruler. You're not going to be able to do anything with that. You need the correct tool for your situation. So I know that these situations that we encounter in life feel insurmountable. The longer they have persisted, let's say it's been a decade, let's say it's been years, let's say it's been your whole life, it feels like just the way reality is. It's just base level. My crazy idea, right, that I've experienced in my life, and it does not make me immune from suffering. It does not mean bad things don't happen to me ever. It doesn't mean I go through hard times and questioning and have dark nights of the soul. That's not what it's about. That likely is going to be a continued experience for most people, but it is leveling up gradually. It's a spiral. It's a spiral of ascension, right? This is what happens. And with the spiral, if you think about it, you go through similar situations, right? You're literally curving on top of similar situations, but you can gradually increase, sometimes dramatically increase, your enjoyment of life, your fulfillment in life. You can look back and say, you know what? I feel better about myself, about the world, about my relationships, about my financial well-being. You absolutely have that ability. If you don't believe that, you are quite literally destined and fated to keep experiencing the same thing over and over and over. I know that is possible to break out of. I know that great change internally is possible for anyone. I would be a dramatic type of asshole if this was only possible for a few people. If it was only possible for me. If it was only possible for people who had a certain type of, psychological makeup. That's not true. Everyone at the end of the day is made up of the same universal consciousness that is fractured off into a multi-dimensional array of beings in many different planes of existence, which means inherently at the end of the day, we are all divine. We are all the same. These are not platitudes. These are not, nice metaphysical, new agey, wishy-washy things to say. They are true, direct experiences that I've had, that many other people have had throughout their lives, that mystics of all shapes and types and sizes have said throughout the ages. This is not like a guess. This is not speculation. This is a direct fact. Your ability to hear and experience that as truth is dependent on where you're coming from. It is based on no small part your experiences in life, but it doesn't mean that accessibility for that change is cut off at any given time. No matter how desperate the situation, no matter how difficult the situation, it doesn't change. It is a perma-fact of existence, right? Non-existence is nothing. It cannot be anything, right? That is also a component. We don't need to get into the union of emptiness and bliss a la Mahayana Buddhism. We don't need to go into that whole spiel about the void and the nexus and all of that weird stuff that freaks people out. But from a practical standpoint, employing these, tools we have, it just behooves you to do it, because I don't believe that anyone has to suffer to a high degree. You may argue, if you're a Buddhist, that life by definition is suffering because we are in an impermanent state, craving to go back to a endless state of perfection. And by definition, being in a dual world prevents that. And so we have this like unsatisfactory kind of desire that can never be fulfilled. Sure. But can you look back in your life and find a time that you were peaceful, that you were happy, that you were content, even if it was just like watching a show or listening to music? One of the reasons I love music so much is there are very few things in the world that can immediately soothe your soul just by engaging with them. And music has that power. When you get lost in a song, when you get lost in a melody, when you get lost in lyrical content that are presented by an artist, it transports you to a different place. And it's not something physically that's happening to you. It's not really the vibrations that are coming from the sound waves out of your speakers or your headphones that are doing that. It's a felt connection with a different plane of existence. It's a different world. It's an ethereal, ephemeral world that we can engage with. It's something that captured my imagination so much that I decided to go to a music school and make music a huge part of my life, for better or for worse. But it's just like there are these things in life that can transport us to different places. And let's say you're having a difficult time, employing these mindset shift attempts, right? Go into nature, go listen to some music, watch something funny. That's what most of the things I subscribe to are comedians on Patreon, because I like to listen to funny shit and laugh my ass off for a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. And the more you can kind of resonate with those types of energies, the easier it will be to employ them in these serious obstacles you have put into your life. I've seen too many people overcome major difficult things. I've spoken to people whose families have had brain cancer, and I give the same exact answers that I would give, or same exact pieces of advice that I would give to someone going through something far less serious objectively. And it's not because I'm hoping and wishing that this will work. I know when this stuff is employed faithfully, with repetition and expectancy, knowing that it will work, even if you feel like a fool, even if you feel like an absolute dork for doing this because it just is such a childish and silly thing to do. If you do it, you will see results. It is empirically testable. It is not something that goes away if you don't want to believe in it. It just, then you won't have access to it. It's something that if you employ faithfully, it always works. I say this almost every week. I've made this podcast about that because it's a message that I need to hear repeatedly, because I'm a bozo a lot of the times and forget this stuff, but I know other people need to hear it too. And you need examples too, right? That's one of the things that Neville Goddard was great at. He would give examples of people who came to him with all types of situations, and he would say this stuff. And then he would come back, at another period of time and say, this is what happened to that person, right? And you could say, well, what about all the cases it didn't work? Well, we know the reasons it didn't work. They gave up. They didn't really believe it. They tried it and maybe they got a little bit of limited success, and that was enough to get them what they wanted, and they stopped doing it. I've certainly been guilty of that plenty of times, but this is just like a reminder that you always are one step away from fulfilling whatever desire you have. And if there feels like an oppressive, sticky, hard situation to get out of, that's specifically what this stuff is designed for, right? That's specifically. And it's not about not putting in effort. This is also something I think got lost in translation in the earlier days when I was speaking about this. You don't have to do something once you employ an idea to your subconscious. Once that's fully accepted by your subconscious, it will happen. But that doesn't mean you do nothing. It doesn't mean you just sit back in your bed and on your couch eating Cheetos, watching TV, and let the good times come to you. Yes, that can work, but that's not typically what people are looking for out of these situations. You will naturally put yourself on a course where doors open up, where opportunities. So do the stuff you're supposed to be doing. You are not going to create an amazing song by not creating the song. You have to make the song. You have to do the stuff that you would like to do to get the results and the rewards from those things. So this isn't something where you just it's a very passive activity. The imaginal act even is a directional, consciously driven activity. You are doing something. Don't think that you just sit back and do nothing in life. That's not what I've ever been saying. I've not explained that lucidly, I feel like, so people have misinterpreted that. So I just I get that this stuff can be difficult. That's really, I think I've put myself on the other side of the fence for this period of my life because I think I was reaching a lot of people who were already high vibing 3-4 years ago. Remember, before COVID and things were just a little bit more chill. We're not really in that energetic space right now. So I have come back to the place where I will hack this stuff with you. We will do it together. It doesn't have to be something where I'm giving you advice from the top down. Look at me, I'm so smart. Do what I say. That's never really where I've meant to come from. But I want to be very clear. I'm in this with you. I'm here with you doing those things. We do it together. That's one of the few things I can provide. I've been lucky enough and blessed enough to be able to create and congregate communities of people who are like-minded, who are working for similar things. And that's just what I realized I'm supposed to be doing. That will look like a lot of different things. That will look like imaginal group stuff we do. It'll look like this podcast. It'll look like the Patreon. It'll look like live events coming to Brooklyn very soon. It's going to look like a lot of different things, but I recognize that's how we actually affect change in our individual lives and in our collective world. Right? We do need to kind of come together as people. Yes, we do this alone. Yes, your experience is individuated. It's individualized for your experience and your reality. But we also have this amazing ability to commune with each other and work together as a group to get this stuff done. So that's what we're going to be doing. Also, big shout outs to the guy. I cannot imagine you're listening to this podcast at this point, who, when I sent out the email about the bonus episodes of Synchronicity, wrote back to me, "Hey, you blew all your magical money and now you want us to pay you. Fuck off." It was the most I've laughed in a really long period of time. Obviously, I hope that person understands that, whatever's going on in their life, don't take it so seriously. A lot of people have trouble offering paid services. I understand that. If you're someone who thinks your value or your worth isn't worth what you're charging, or you couldn't even charge for it, just reevaluate that. People will pay when they want to pay. People will interact with you and your creativity and your expressions when they want to. Don't take the opinions of other people seriously. If you know honestly deep down that you are a good person, authentically being yourself, offering things that you believe may help people, charge whatever you want for it. Okay? It doesn't matter. Yeah, you may need to experiment with different ways of doing it. One of the things that I personally think, like, this is my advice to anyone just getting started out with like energy readings or anything along those lines, any services that are designed to help, do it for free. Do it for free. Start out for free. All of the best jobs in my life have started by me literally doing it for free. Okay? And that usually starts because I don't feel that I have enough experience to charge people money for things yet. But I've realized over the years that it's not just about that. It's why I go on TikTok almost on a daily basis and just offer up readings. It feels good to do that. Not everyone at every given point in time will have the means to pay for something. So at least offer it up. Let people engage with it. Try to do, that's why I do the podcast for free, right? I have a paid version of it too, but I also do it for free because it's just how you create energy. It's how things flow to you. It's how things flow to other people. It's just a smart thing to do in general. And I really recommend, because a lot of people, excuse me, have trouble getting started with this stuff. And I always say, do it for free. Let people on your social media know that this is what you're doing. I guarantee you will get people who are interested in what you're doing. And then you can charge whatever you want to charge. When you feel that your, service or offering is of a certain level, charge what you feel what is right. It doesn't matter. And there will always be people, whether they express it or not, who think you're doing something wrong, who think you're taking advantage, or think this is bullshit. Just try not to pay attention to that stuff. I know it can be difficult. I obsessively read negative comments. But you realize after a while that it's just like, it's not, if it's not you, it's not really going to affect you. It's not going to change your opinion. It can get you thinking about stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But, you got to laugh at this stuff sometimes just because it's not really real. For them, it's real. For you, it's what you make of it, right? And if you let yourself get influenced by the opinions of others who have a low opinion of you, where do you think your mind's going to end up going, right? So anyway, this is all to say everything is going to be fine. Right? We're all good. There's no big problems that you can't overcome. Everything is super chill if you allow it to be. If it doesn't feel chill, recognize that that is a feeling and a thought that's coming up. Find that gratitude. Find that thing that allows you to kind of resonate with a higher spiritual truth, and try to transpose that feeling onto the obstacles or areas of your life that feel restricted. Do this diligently. Right? This is the reason I'm opening up these 28-day things. I know it can be difficult to do this on your own. There's so many things that come up in our days that are very hard and they can get us off track. I face them. Everyone faces them. But when you have a group of people who are doing this together and can share their experiences, it gets a lot easier for people. And so that's what we're doing, right? It doesn't have to be an isolated, lonely journey. And we have a cool year coming up in 2024. It is not going to be as chaotic. And you can say, well, Noah, how do you know this? I know it. I feel it. I can sense energy changes. I can sense it in myself. I have an ability to sense it collectively at times. Am I always 100% right? Could 2024 be World War III? Sure, it could be. It's not going to be. We are going to be fine. Everything is fine. You're great. All right. I will see you soon. That's it for this week. Lots of love. Bye-bye.